Today I want to read a story to you about how maple syrup is made. We're about to come upon the maple syrup weekend here in the state of Maine. So I want to share a story with you about maple syrup. This story is called Maple Syrup from the Sugarhouse. And it's called a sugar house because that's where the maple syrup is made, in the sugar house. So some of you might tap maple trees, and I know at school right now they're tapping maple trees. And you see these cans that are at the maple tree, and what comes out is a clear liquid. It looks like water, but it's not. It's actually a sticky sap. And in order to make that sap turn into maple syrup, you've got to boil it really hot. And some people have sugar houses. So here we are, Maple Syrup from the Sugar House by Lori Lorenzo Knowlton and pictures by Catherine Minner. There's the maple syrup in the jars. So maple syrup starts as sap from trees. But what happens next? Maple trees slumber while the winter winds whistle and whirl until slumber means they're sleeping. Kelsey feels the sun pushing the cold aside and sees the snow melting, drip, drop, dripping, and the ground below thaws. So this whole week we've been talking about a sign of spring with the ground thawing and making mud. Is the weather right for a sap run? Kelsey asks. Daddy nods. Freezing nights and warmer days. Kelsey follows Daddy, trudging out to the woods filled with sugar maple trees. Daddy says since last year's harvest, the maple trees have grown and stored summer's sugar through the chilly fall and icy winter. That stored sugar is now ready to be collected. So there they are with all their pails. They're going to go and tap their maple trees. So they tap them with a spool, and when the sap is ready, it comes through the tree, through the spool, and into the bucket. It's really cool to see. Daddy stops at a maple tree. Where is that last year's hole? Kelsey asks. It's healed over like a scrape on your knee. Daddy drills a pencil-sized hole into the giant sugar maple tree. Kelsey hammers a metal spile into the hole with a tap, tap, tap. Then she hangs the first metal bucket. See, they're making a hole, and they're using the drill to make the hole. And then they put the spool in. You can see it right here. It drips from the spile. We call it a spile. All day, the trees drink up moisture through their roots from the freshly falling thawed dirt. All day, the rich sugar drops of sap drip, drop, drop, drip out the spiles and into the buckets. So the sap is coming out of the spiles and going into the buckets. All day and into the next day, the sugar bush camp grows. Mama welcomes grandparents, aunties, uncles, cousins, and friends who bring food-filled coolers and helping hands. So they're all helping collect the sap. And they're all going to help make the maple syrup. While Kelsey waits for the sap to fill the buckets, she helps sterilize bottles and stack wood by the firebox, and then plays tag with her cousins, Farrah and Gwen, until, there we go, they got a hot fire going. Daddy, the buckets are full, Kelsey announced. Throughout the sugar bush, everyone works together. Some gather the filled buckets, while others lift the buckets and pour the sap into the storage tank on the back of the tractor. Kelsey leads Farrah and Gwen to return the empty buckets back to the maple tree spiles. Then everyone moves to the next section of the trees. So there they go. They're putting all the sap into this container right here. So they're putting all the sap in. They're collecting it all and putting it in. And then it's got to go somewhere. Hours later, the buckets have been emptied, and the holding tank is full. Kelsey hears the tank sap, splish, splash, sloshing all the way to the sugar house. There it goes to the sugar house. Sap has to go to the sugar house. Make sure I don't miss a page. There, Daddy starts the pump to suction the sap through a filter into a larger holding tank. Gravity pulls the sap down through a pipe to a long, flat, warming pan. Below the pan, flames from the firebox heat the chilly, colorless sap, sending it swirling into the evaporator. How long before it boils? Kelsey asks. Soon, Daddy answers. So it's going to go to the evaporator once it boils. Daddy watches the maple steam roll, rising to the roof vent, then out the night sky. Look, Daddy, the sap's rumbling, bubbling, and boiling. The water in the sap is evaporating, rising the sugar content. Daddy smiles. So when they boil all this sap down, any water that's in the sap is coming out. So it only leaves sugar behind and no water. Kelsey passes wood to Daddy to refill the stove, keeping the fire white hot. Mama passes out hot cocoa, and everyone tells stories to pass the time. So they're all waiting for that sap to boil down to make maple syrup. Takes a while to get that to make maple syrup. It has to boil a long time. More sap is added, gallon after gallon after gallon. Little by little, the sap changes from clear to golden amber. There it is, changing. It's turning into sap. Daddy takes a spoon and places a drop of sap from the steaming evaporator pan onto his sugar gauge. He checks to see if enough water has evaporated to leave maple syrup. Everyone waits, but Daddy shakes his head. We need to keep boiling. It's not quite ready. They're going to keep it boiling. An hour later, Daddy tests the sap again. We're getting close. The rumbling of the boiled sap is the only sound now. Everyone snuggles in sleeping bags, and the adults take turns helping Daddy keep the fire hot. Until Daddy tries again. It's maple syrup. Time to pour. Daddy opens the pour valve on the end of the evaporator, and the sap flows down through a filter into the canning pan. So it is ready to be made into maple syrup. Hooray! It's ready! Everyone jumps into action, filling bottles, twisting caps, lining them up. Yay! So there they are, filling the bottles. They're getting all the syrup in there, and they're all helping each other out. Until the first run of maple syrup is bottled and cooling. So they do it until they're all filled. Kelsey and Daddy sit down with family and friends to enjoy a breakfast feast of pancakes, sausage, biscuits, coffee, and ice cream, all smothered in liquid gold maple syrup. So that is how maple syrup is made. And I hope you guys get a chance to go out and see an actual sugar house. They are so cool to see. Enjoy this maple syrup Sunday weekend.